You step out to the far edge of your yard where that massive storm took down the maple last spring. The wood is already chopped, split, and neatly stacked for winter. But that 20-inch stump is still sitting right there. Its weathered gray top barely clears the dirt, with thick roots spidering out through the grass like wagon spokes. You've been staring at it for half a year. You maneuver the mower around it every single week. It catches your eye every time you walk out back. And every time you think about calling a pro to deal with it, you remember the going rate, anywhere from $200 to $500 just to remove a single stump. So you finally make the call to a guy shows up, takes one look, and gives you the price. That's $375 plus tax plus a fee just for showing up. It's 2 hours of his time with a massive $4,000 piece of machinery, and your yard is back to normal. But standing right there in your own backyard, it hits you. Most folks today are basically programmed to believe that pulling out a checkbook is the only way to get rid of a tree stump. I want you to let that sink in for a second. People who work the land have been pulling up stumps since the very beginning of property ownership. Early pioneers cleared millions of acres of dense forests. They did it by hand, they used draft animals, and they used endless patience methods that didn't cost a dime. Entire regions of this country were transformed from dense woods into working homesteads by people who never once hired a heavy machinery service. They had 10 rock-solid techniques that cost next to nothing, and practically all of them still work flawlessly today. I spent working on traditional, old-school farms. I personally clear roots out of pastures, new garden beds, and property lines. I've never fired up a backhoe or paid a grinding company. Today, I'm going to walk you through 10 proven ways to get rid of a stump without renting a single piece of heavy equipment. Some require elbow grease, some require time, but every single one gets the job done. Just match the technique to your specific situation, and that stump is history. Just a quick heads up before we dive in. The traditional methods my family relies on could fill a whole manual, and I actually put the extended written versions together on my website. If you want the deep dive, it's over there. Now, let's get into the list. Number 1, the classic hand dig and root sever. This is the absolute baseline. Honestly, most of the other tricks on this list are just variations of this, or ways to make the digging a little easier. This is the exact approach those early settlers used to clear their first acres, and it hasn't changed a bit. Grab a spade, a pickaxe, and a junk axe. Don't use your good splitting maul, because hacking through dirt will ruin the blade. Start by trenching around the base, roughly 2 to 3 feet away from the trunk, digging down about a foot to 18 inches. Expose those major roots running outward as much as you can. A fully grown tree usually has around 4 to 8 main ones. Take that beater axe and chop right through every single one close to the base. Once they're severed, the stump will start to shift. Use a heavy digging bar or a solid fence post to pry it back and forth. The taproot, if it has one, will hold out the longest, so you'll have to dig down further and chop that one too. This approach works on any stump out there if you're willing to put in the sweat. A small one pops out in an hour or two. A massive oak might take 2 strong guys an entire day. But you aren't renting anything, using chemicals. Now let me be straight with you. This is tough physical labor. If your back isn't up for a long day of digging, keep listening. But if you can handle the workout, it's the most straightforward, independent option. Number 2, leveraging the standing trunk. This one takes some foresight. If you haven't actually cut the tree down yet, you have a massive advantage that the other methods don't have. The trunk itself acts like a giant pry bar to poop the root ball right out of the dirt. Before felling the tree, dig around the base and chop the major roots just like in the first method. Then, with someone spotting you on the ground, and tie a heavy chain or thick rope 20 to 30 feet high. The higher you go, the better your leverage. Have a buddy pull from a safe distance or hook up a manual winch to a sturdy anchor point. With the roots detached, the tree will often crash down, ripping the entire root ball out of the soil with surprisingly little effort. This was a favorite trick for clearing land back in the day. Your tree does the heavy lifting for free. Once you cut it low, you lose that mechanical edge. Number 3, the come, a long pull. If the tree is already a stump, you can replace height leverage with mechanical force. A come, along is a manual hand winch that gives you thousands of pounds of pulling power. First, you still have to dig and chop those main roots. You can't just rely on brute force against a healthy root system. It won't work. Wrap a thick chain or heavy-duty nylon strap, never a rope, around the base of the stump, nice and low. Anchor your come along to 30 feet away. Like another big tree or a buried vehicle axle, hook the winch to the stumps and start cranking slowly. A pro tip is to throw a spare tire or a tightly rolled heavy jacket on the chain near the stump. It changes the angle so you're pulling up, not just sideways. Now, a critical safety warning. Absolute tension, like a giant rubber band, and will snap back with lethal force if it breaks. People have lost eyes and even their lives to snapping ropes. Chains don't stretch, and thick straps won't whip back dangerously. And please do not try doing this by hooking a chain to your pickup truck. That usually ends with a broken chain flying straight through your rear windshield. A hand winch is slow, controlled, and safe. A truck is none of those things. Number 4, if you don't have the physical strength to take, and you're fine waiting a few months, this is the way to go. Epsom salt is technically manganese sulfate. It's highly hygroscopic, meaning it pulls moisture out of whatever it touches. When you pack it deep into the wood, it dries out the stump, kills any surviving tissue, and sets up the perfect environment for rot organisms to take over way faster than they normally would. And unlike standard rock salt, which permanently poisons your soil with sodium chloride, Epsom salt actually leaves behind nutrients that plants love. Use a chainsaw to get the stump as flush to the ground as possible, but watch out for rocks and dirt that will instantly ruin your blade. Grab a drill with your biggest bit. 1 inch is perfect, and bore holes 10 inches down, spaced a few inches apart all over the top. Pack those holes completely tight with Epsom salt. Pour in some warm water to dissolve it and carry it deep in the wood. Throw a heavy tarp or thick plastic sheet over the whole thing and weigh the edges down so the rain doesn't wash your salt away. Every 3 or 4 weeks, pull the top back, add more salt and water, and cover it back up. In 2 to 3 months, it's completely dead. In 6 to 12 months, it'll be a spongy mess you can easily break apart with a shovel. It costs maybe $5 or $10 and takes an hour of actual labor spread across a whole year. This is the method I recommend for almost everyone who isn't in a rush. Just a quick pause before we hit the next 6 methods. Maintaining a property means constantly dealing with lit issues, whether it's repairs, landscaping, or just daily upkeep. We've actually got a great online community where folks share exactly what's working on their own properties. I'll drop the link in the description. Now, back to the list. Number 5, the controlled burn. This is the oldest clearing trick in American history. It saves your back, but it takes hours of babysitting and burns a massive amount of wood. First off, the stump has to be bone dry, idly dead for at least a year. Green wood just won't catch right. Dig a little trench underneath the stump so you can start a fire below it. Heat travels up, so you need the flames catching the wood from the bottom. Start small with kindling, then feed it bigger pieces as it gets going. You'll spend 8 to 12 hours feeding that fire, and you'll probably use up the entire tree's worth of cut wood to get the job done. But here's the legal reality check. Most jurisdictions strictly regulate open flames. You might need a specific permit, or you might live in a county with strict seasonal burn bans. Plenty of neighborhoods absolutely prohibit it. Check your local laws before you strike a single match. An illegal fire can land you massive fines, and if it spreads to nearby brush, you'll look at property damage and serious liability. Always have a water source ready, never leave it unattended overnight, and don't even try it on a windy or highly dry day. It's a great traditional method if you're out in a rural area, but skip it if you live in town. Number 6. The tarp rot. This one takes 1 to 3 years, but it uses absolute no chemicals, costs basically $0, and builds incredible soy. Cut the stump down low, soak it heavily with a hose, and completely cover it in a thick bract tarp pinned down with heavy stones or buried edges. Pile some yard waste like grass clippings, leaves, or compost until you cover it. Right on top of the stump material adds nitrogen and good fungi that drastically speed up the rot. Peek under the tarp every few months and hose it down if it's drying out. The moisture allows natural bacteria and beetles to do the hard work for you. Give it a couple of years and it turns into dark, crumbly dirt. You can just mix right into your garden. We're just taking nature's exact process and give it a little boost with trapped warmth and moisture. Number 7. Putting livestock to work. You won't find this in most modern lawn care guides because you obviously need animals. But pigs, goats, and chickens will tear up a stump completely free of charge. Pigs are absolute powerhouses for this. Their natural instinct to root will rip a small to medium stump to shreds in a matter of weeks. Just fence them in over the stump and they'll dig up the roots, strip the bark, and turn the whole area into bare dirt. Goats take longer, but they strip the bark and eat any new shoots that try to sprout, slowly starving and killing the root system over a season. Chickens are only good for the tiniest stumps, but their constant scratching exposes roots and speeds up the rotting process. This is a classic farming hack. Before heavy equipment existed, folks just moved the pig pen to whatever patch of land needed clearing next. If you have animals, this costs you nothing. Number 8. Back in the day, farms used giant hand crank screw mechanisms to rip stumps straight up. Today, the modern equivalent is a heavy-duty leverage bar with gripping jaws at the base. You clamp the jaws onto a small stump or a thick sapling, pull back heavily on the bar, and the raw leverage pops it right out of the dirt. These tools are amazing for small stuff, up to about 3 inches thick, but they aren't magic. For a giant, mature tree, you still need a heavy winch and a lot of root digging. Number 9. Plunge cutting and wedging. If you've got an old, brittle, dried-out stump that's been sitting there for years, you can literally shatter it. Take an old chainsaw and make a checkerboard pattern of plunge cut straight down across the top, going about 4 to 6 inches deep. Then, grab a sledgehammer and pound heavy steel or wood-splitting wedges in those cuts. The dry wood will crack and splinter along the cuts into pieces you can just pull out by hand. Again, keep the saw blade completely out of the dirt. Folks, keep it dedicated. Lots of folks just for this. Just remember, this only works on dead, dry wood. Fresh, green stumps will just swallow the wedges without cracking at all. Number 10, the absolute cheapest option, patience. Just let nature take its course. If a stump is tucked away by a fence line out in a pasture or deep in a corner where it's not bothering anyone, just leave it alone. Depend on your climate. It'll rot away completely in 5 to 10 years. Maybe a little longer if you live out west where it's bone dry. It costs nothing and requires zero effort. It turns into a habitat for good insects and fungi and eventually leaves you with the richest patch of soil on your entire property. You don't always have to immediately fix every single problem. Sometimes just waiting is the smartest, most traditional move you can make. Think about what we just covered here. 10 completely honest, proven ways to get rid of a tree stump. Patient hand digging. Leveraging the tall trunk, winching it out, salt, decay, controlled burning. Top rotting, using your livestock, manual leverage pulling, wedging old wood, and simply practicing patience. Almost none of these methods cost more than $50, and plenty of them cost nothing at all. These are the exact techniques that cleared this entire country. before companies started demanding hundreds of dollars to bring in a massive grinder. Do the math on this. If you hire someone for 10 stumps, you're out $3,000 to $5,000. If you do it yourself using these methods, you might spend $50 on some Epsom salt and a good chain, and spend a few weekends working outside. There is absolute zero profit for the modern stump industry to tell you that these old school tricks still work perfectly. So, the simple methods just stay quiet, passed down among folks who never forgot them, while everybody else writes massive checks every spring for something they could handle them. You don't have to do that. Walk out to your yard this week and take a good look at Stump. Figure out how big it is, how dry it is, and what you're willing to do. If you want a workout, grab a shovel. If you have a winch, use it. If you can wait a year, grab the Epsom salt. Pick the method that fits your property and your schedule and get to work. Don't write that $400 check. Use the same techniques your great-grandparents used to build their lives. Drop a comment below and let me know what kind of tree you're dealing with and which route you're going to take. And if your family had their own clever way of pulling stumps back in the day, I want to hear about it. Though we definitely don't recommend the old dynamite trick anymore. Next time, since we're on the topic of hard outdoor work, I'm going to walk you through the traditional way to properly sharpen an axe, a knife, and a sheath so they actually hold an edge for a lifetime. Until then, match your stump to the right method, hold on your cash, and handle it the way it's always been done.